Aries. Let me ask you something, and don't answer it out loud, just feel it. Have you noticed how nothing is wrong, yet something doesn't sit right anymore? Not chaos, not drama, just a quiet tension you can't explain. I've been there. That moment when life keeps moving, but your spirit stops pushing back. This is how a shift really begins for Aries, not with noise, not with a breakdown, but with silence that suddenly feels intentional. If you're here, it's probably because something you stepped away from is starting to reveal the truth it never said out loud. Stay with me. Don't rush this part. And before we go any further, tell me in the comments, do you trust what you're feeling right now, or are you still trying to explain it away? Because what's forming next doesn't need you to run. It just needs you to not turn back. All right, let me lean a little closer now, not to explain anything to you, just to sit with you inside that quiet you've been feeling. Because for Aries, this part is never loud, it's subtle. It slips in while you're doing ordinary things, driving, answering emails, standing in the kitchen with the light still off. Nothing is falling apart. Your life still looks functional from the outside. But inside, something has stopped arguing with reality. That's the part most people miss. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to change. You didn't announce a breakthrough. What happened was quieter than that. Your nervous system softened. Your instincts stopped trying to justify what felt heavy. And without realizing it, you let yourself notice the misalignment. Not panic, not sadness, just a gentle knowing that something no longer fit the person you're becoming. I remember that moment for myself, when I realized I wasn't tired because I was weak. I was tired because I was forcing myself to stay oriented towards something that had already expired. And the body always knows before the mind is ready to admit it. For Aries, that's especially important. You're wired to move forward, to lead, to act. So when you pause without collapsing, when you continue functioning but feel slightly detached from the old rhythm, that's not confusion. That's discernment forming. Here's the truth no one tells Aries. Your shifts don't start with fire. They start with restraint. With the moment you don't react the way you used to. With the moment you don't explain yourself. With the moment you let something feel unfinished without rushing to close the loop. That quiet isn't emptiness. It's space. And space is where clarity breathes. You may notice yourself listening differently lately. Not just to people, to timing, to pauses in conversations, to what doesn't get said. There's wisdom there. And it's not dramatic wisdom. It's practical, grounded, almost boring in the best way. Let me ask you something gently. When was the last time you felt this calm while standing at the edge of change? Because if you're honest, this doesn't feel like loss. It feels like release without celebration. And that can be unsettling when you're used to momentum defining your identity. But healing astrology isn't about predicting what's coming next. It's about recognizing who you are when you stop performing certainty. And right now, you're learning how to trust the version of yourself that doesn't need to rush toward resolution. That's a different kind of strength, a quieter one. But it lasts longer. You don't need to label this moment. You don't need to make it mean anything yet. All you need is to notice that you're no longer resisting the truth your body has been whispering for a while. And that alone tells me something important about you. You're not stuck. You're listening. So as this unfolds, don't look for signs outside of yourself. Pay attention to how your inner pace is changing, to what no longer pulls at you, to what feels oddly neutral instead of charged. That neutrality is not indifference. It's alignment beginning to settle in. And if you're willing to sit there for a moment longer without pushing forward or turning back, you may realize this quiet isn't the absence of direction. It's the place where a truer one starts to form. There's a moment that comes after the listening, after you realize you're no longer fighting what your body already knows. It's quieter than courage, quieter than confidence, but it's decisive in a way only Aries understands. Because this wasn't a dramatic choice. No slammed doors, no speeches, no final messages typed and erased a dozen times. It was something much smaller and much braver. You stopped explaining yourself, not because you didn't care, But because you noticed how much energy it took to keep translating your truth into a language others were never really trying to learn. That's the part people misunderstand about Aries. They think your power lives in action, in speed, in force. But your real power shows up when you don't move at all, when you let a conversation end unfinished, when you let a role dissolve without replacing it immediately, when you choose not to correct someone's misunderstanding of you. That choice doesn't look heroic from the outside. It looks like withdrawal, like detachment, like you've gone quiet, but inside, something recalibrates. I've watched this happen before, in myself, in people who didn't even realize they were crossing a threshold. The moment you stop seeking agreement, your nervous system shifts from defense to direction. And direction doesn't need applause. You may have noticed that after you made this quiet cut, nothing instantly improved. Life didn't reward you. People didn't suddenly understand. If anything, the silence felt heavier at first. That's normal. When you remove yourself from a familiar pattern, there's a vacuum. Not an emotional one, an energetic one. The system around you has to adjust to your absence from the role you used to play. And here's where the healing part matters. You didn't walk away to punish anyone. You didn't pull back to prove a point. You did it because staying would have required you to keep shrinking your instincts. That's not growth, that's erosion. Aries isn't meant to erode, so you chose the harder path, the one without immediate reassurance, the one where you don't get to explain yourself into being understood. Let me ask you something softly. When you stopped pushing, did you notice how some things stopped pushing back? That's not coincidence, that's alignment beginning to test its footing. You might feel slightly unmoored right now. Not lost, just not anchored to the old identity that came from being needed or visible or constantly in motion. And that can feel strange for you, because stillness isn't your comfort zone. But this kind of stillness isn't stagnation, it's precision. It's the pause before a cleaner direction reveals itself. One that doesn't require you to burn yourself out just to feel legitimate. You didn't announce this decision because it wasn't meant to be negotiated. It was meant to be honored quietly. And if no one noticed right away, that doesn't mean it didn't matter. Some shifts only become visible once everything else rearranges around them. So if you're sitting here wondering whether that small choice really counted, let me tell you this as a friend. It did. Not because it guarantees anything, but because it marked the moment you stopped asking for permission to be who you already are. And that kind of decision always changes the trajectory, even if it takes a little time for the world to catch up. And then comes the part that tests you in a different way. Not your strength, not your confidence, your patience. Because once you make a quiet decision, the world rarely rearranges on your schedule. And for Aries, that can feel almost insulting. Like life is asking you to hold a pose you were never trained to hold. You expect motion to create momentum. You expect clarity to produce immediate change. So when nothing visibly shifts at first, your mind starts negotiating. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should smooth it over. Maybe I should reach back out and make it easier. But what you are experiencing is not failure. It is the delay that protects your growth. There is a kind of timing that belongs to the universe, yes. But there is also a very human timing that belongs to systems. And systems do not change the moment one person evolves. They change when the old pattern can no longer recruit you to keep it alive. That is why this pause matters. When you stop participating, the structure has to show its true shape, not the shape you wanted it to be, the shape it actually is. And that can take a few days, sometimes longer. Not because you are being punished, but because reality is revealing what was hidden by your effort. You were the glue. You were the translator. You were the one who made it make sense. So when you stepped back, the weak points had to become visible. The gaps, the inconsistencies, the places where things only functioned because you kept compensating. This is why the shift did not happen immediately. The old dynamic needs time to react to your absence. It needs time to test you, to see if you will return to your old role out of habit, guilt, or discomfort. And this is where Aries learns a deeper kind of self-respect. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that does not need to be explained, the kind that does not collapse just because nobody confirms it. Let me ask you something in a way that feels honest. What part of you still believes you have to rush back in just to prove you are not the problem. Because that is how the old pattern hooks you. It makes your silence feel like cruelty. It makes your boundaries feel like overreaction. It makes your calm feel like coldness. But your calm is not cold. It is clean. And clean takes time to settle. In astrology, Aries carries the spark, the initiator, the one who opens doors. But there is an advanced Aries lesson that most people never talk about. Sometimes the bravest initiation is not starting something new. It is refusing to restart what already proved it cannot hold you with integrity. That is why time feels strange right now, because you are no longer feeding the old story, and the new one has not fully introduced itself yet, so you are standing in between. And I know, Aries, that in-between space can feel like being suspended, like you are waiting. But you are not waiting. You are witnessing. You are watching what people do when you are no longer managing their comfort. You are watching what a system does when you stop being its stabilizer. You are learning where your energy actually belongs. And if you can give this delay the respect it deserves, something important happens. You stop confusing urgency with destiny. You stop confusing pressure with purpose. You stop mistaking noise for truth. Because truth does not chase you. Truth remains. It shows itself over time. So if it feels slow, let that be information. If it feels quiet, let that be clarity. And if a part of you is tempted to go back just to end the discomfort, pause long enough to remember. Discomfort is not always a warning. Sometimes it is simply the sound of an old identity losing access to you. And that is when the real shift starts to take shape. And somewhere inside that waiting, something else begins to surface. Not loudly, not all at once. It arrives the way dawn does, quiet, almost unnoticeable at first. This is where the truth lives, not the kind people confess, not the kind written in messages or explained in conversations that come too late. This truth was never meant to be spoken because it doesn't rely on language at all. It shows up in behavior, in the way someone pauses instead of reaching out, in the way a system hesitates without you holding it together, in the way silence suddenly carries more information than words ever did. I know this part can sting in a very specific way for Aries, because you're direct by nature. You value clarity. You respect honesty that shows its face. So when the truth reveals itself indirectly, it can feel almost insulting, like you deserved better timing, better courage from the other side. But here's what I want to share with you, friend to friend. This kind of truth is actually the cleanest kind there is. Because it doesn't ask you to interpret intent. It doesn't ask you to forgive explanations. It doesn't ask you to decide what to believe. It simply shows you what changes when you leave the room. You may notice that something you walked away from starts to adjust, not dramatically, not with apologies or announcements, but with small telling shifts, a delayed response, a sudden awareness, an action that only happens once your presence is no longer guaranteed. And that's when it lands. Not as anger, not even as grief, but as clarity. The clarity that says, quietly, so this is what it took. That realization can be heavy. Not because it hurts your pride, but because it confirms what your intuition sensed long before your mind was ready to accept it. You weren't imagining the imbalance. You weren't asking for too much. You weren't leaving too soon. You were simply ahead of the truth. And here's the part most people don't talk about. This truth isn't here to punish anyone. It's here to release you from carrying responsibility that was never yours to begin with. When people only shift once you're gone, it tells you something essential. Not about their capacity, but about the cost you were paying to keep things functioning. Aries often confuses loyalty with endurance. You stay longer than you should because you believe commitment means holding the line. But growth teaches a different definition. Sometimes commitment means knowing when your presence is no longer aligned with your integrity. Let me ask you something gently. When you see these small changes now, do you feel pulled back in? Or do you feel more certain about why you stepped away? That feeling is important because the truth revealing itself is not an invitation to return. It's confirmation that your absence was meaningful. And meaningful does not mean dramatic. It means effective. There's no climax here, no confrontation. Seen, no moment where everything explodes into resolution. Just a quiet understanding settling into your chest, the kind that doesn't need validation. This is a deeper layer of healing astrology, not forecasting outcomes, but helping you recognize patterns that no longer need your energy to survive. You are not meant to chase closure. You are meant to notice alignment. And right now, alignment is teaching you through contrast, through timing, through what only becomes visible once you step out of the frame. So if this truth feels subtle but undeniable, trust that response. It's not meant to shake you. It's meant to steady you. Because once the truth shows itself without words, you no longer need to question your decision. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to defend it. You simply let it stand. And as it does, something else begins to reposition quietly around you. And once that truth settles, something else begins to move. Not on the surface, not in a way you can point to or explain, but underneath everything you thought was fixed. This is the moment most people overlook, because nothing looks different yet. Your days still unfold the same way. The same streets, the same inbox, the same quiet hours where you notice your own breathing. But inside, the balance has shifted. For Aries, this part requires a different kind of courage, not the courage to act, but the courage to not interfere. You may feel the impulse to step in, to clarify, to smooth things over, to reassert control, just to feel grounded again. That instinct is familiar. It has kept you alive. It has kept things moving. It has earned you respect in places where inertia would have stalled others. But right now, that instinct is not needed, because the repositioning happening around you depends on your stillness. When you stop managing outcomes, life starts revealing what can stand on its own, what adapts, what collapses, what quietly proves its value without being rescued. This is where roles begin to dissolve, not through confrontation, but through absence. You might notice that certain dynamics lose their grip on you, not because you push them away, but because they no longer know how to engage without the version of you that kept them functional. And that can feel strange. There is a subtle grief in watching things rearrange without your input, a sense of being unnecessary where you once felt essential. But that discomfort carries a hidden gift. It shows you what was never meant to depend on your constant effort. Here is something I learned the hard way, and I want to offer it to you honestly. When life starts reorganizing without your involvement, it is not diminishing you. It is recentering you. Aries energy is powerful, but it is not meant to be expended everywhere. You are not here to stabilize every system you touch. You are here to bring movement where movement is aligned. So when you hold the silence now, you are not being passive. You are being precise. Precision is knowing when your presence adds value and when it only delays truth. In these next days, pay attention to what unfolds effortlessly, to what flows without negotiation, to what either steps forward clearly or steps away cleanly. Those movements are information, not instructions, not promises, just signals showing you where your energy belongs next. Let me ask you something gently. What if this quiet was not asking you to wait, but inviting you to observe who and what reorganizes when you stop holding the structure together? That awareness changes everything, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You begin to recognize which connections were sustained by habit, not resonance, which opportunities required strain, not alignment. And without doing anything dramatic, you find yourself standing in a slightly different place inside your own life, more centered, less reactive, more selective. That is the real shift. Not an external event, not a sudden announcement, but an internal recalibration that quietly changes what you tolerate, what you pursue, and what you allow near you. You do not need to protect this moment with force. You only need to respect it. Let things fall into their new positions. Let value reveal itself without persuasion. Let what no longer fits remove itself without resistance. Because when you stop interfering, something remarkable happens. Life starts arranging itself around who you are becoming instead of who you used to be. And that is when the path ahead begins to feel lighter. Not because it is easy, but because it finally matches you. And after everything settles into its new position, there is a feeling that no one prepares you for. It does not arrive with relief. It does not feel like victory. It arrives quietly, almost awkwardly, like standing in a room after the noise has stopped and realizing how tired you are. This is the emotional aftermath people rarely talk about, because Aries is often praised for being decisive, for choosing correctly, for having the courage to walk away. But no one tells you that being right can still feel heavy. You might wake up one morning and notice a dull ache behind your eyes. Not sadness exactly, more like a fatigue that has nowhere to go. A sense of emotional emptiness that surprises you because you expected clarity to feel lighter than this. It is important to say this gently and honestly. That feeling does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means you stopped running on adrenaline. For a long time, you were fueled by urgency, by responsibility, by the quiet pressure of holding things together. When that pressure lifts, your nervous system finally exhales. And when it exhales, it reveals how much you were carrying. This is not collapse. It is decompression. I remember thinking something was wrong with me the first time this happened. I had done the hard thing. I had chosen integrity over convenience. So why did I feel so drained? Then I understood something that changed how I see healing. Strength does not always feel empowering in the moment it is claimed. Sometimes it feels like grief for the version of yourself who survived by pushing through. You may notice yourself moving slower now, needing more quiet, less interested in stimulation that once kept you distracted. This is not regression, it is recalibration. For Aries especially, this phase can feel unsettling because your identity has often been tied to motion, to being the one who acts, the one who initiates, the one who keeps things alive through sheer will. So when the emotional intensity drops, you might wonder who you are without the fire. But listen to me carefully here. The fire did not go out. It simply stopped burning everything around it. What you are feeling now is not emptiness. It is space. Space where your energy can finally rest inside your body instead of being projected outward to manage situations that asked too much of you. This is where long-term stability begins, not with excitement, not with applause, but with a grounded sense of self that does not need to prove its value every day. Let me ask you something softly. If you did not have to perform strength for anyone right now, what would your body ask for? More sleep? More silence? More simplicity? Those are not signs of weakness. They are signs of integration. You are integrating the version of yourself who chose differently. And integration takes time. This is the part of healing astrology that rarely makes headlines. It is not about what is coming next. It is about honoring what just ended without rushing to replace it. So if you feel a little flat, a little tender, a little unmotivated, let that be okay. You are not losing momentum. You are building endurance. And endurance is what carries you through the chapters that last. As this emotional quiet continues, pay attention to what nourishes you without effort, what feels steady instead of thrilling, what allows you to be present without pushing. That is where your next sense of purpose will eventually take root, not in the rush, not in the reaction, but in this honest human pause where you learn how to stand without bracing. This phase is not meant to excite you. It is meant to stabilize you, and that stability will matter more than you realize very soon. And somewhere inside that steadier ground, a quiet question begins to form. Not about what you will get, not about what is owed to you, but about what you are now available for. This shift was never designed as a reward. It did not arrive to congratulate you for enduring. It arrived to clear the conditions around you. That distinction matters. Because when life prepares you, it does not hand you outcomes. It adjusts the doorway. It widens the frame. It removes the friction that kept certain paths from even seeing you clearly. You may notice this preparation showing up in subtle ways. A role that once felt heavy no longer pulls at you. A conversation that would have drained you now ends quickly, without effort. A possibility that once felt unrealistic no longer feels distant, just unfamiliar. This is not luck, and it is not fate. It is consequence. When you stop returning to what no longer fits, your energy becomes legible. Others can feel it. Systems can sense it. Opportunities that require clarity begin to recognize you. That does not mean they arrive immediately. It means they can now approach without being filtered through old compromises. As a friend, I want to say this plainly. You are not being prepared for more. You are being prepared for different. Different asks something quieter from you. It asks for discernment instead of drive, for alignment instead of endurance, for patience that is rooted in self-respect, not waiting. This is where many Aries get tempted to look back, not because the old cycle was good, but because it was familiar. Familiar can feel safer than unknown, even when it costs you. So the real work here is not moving forward. It is not moving backward. Standing still is not passive in this moment. It is active containment. You are holding a boundary that allows new structures to take shape without interference. You are letting the old cycle complete itself without your energy feeding it. That completion matters, because if you return to what you outgrew, the cycle does not evolve. It repeats, with the same lessons, the same fatigue, the same quiet erosion of self-trust. But if you remain where you are, something else becomes possible. Not guaranteed, not promised. Possible. A role that respects your pace. A way of earning that does not require constant urgency. A connection that meets you without needing you to perform strength. These things cannot approach you while you are still oriented toward the old pattern. They do not compete for attention. They wait for availability. Let me ask you something gently, as someone who has learned this slowly. If you did not need to prove your worth through effort anymore, what kind of life would you even allow yourself to imagine? Notice what comes up, not as a plan, as a feeling. That feeling is not instruction, it is orientation. This is healing astrology at its most practical. Not forecasting outcomes, but clarifying conditions. Not predicting change, but explaining why certain changes could not reach you before. You are not late. You're not missing anything. You are becoming accessible to a different level of exchange. One where your energy is not spent just to maintain stability, but invested where it can grow. So stay where you are. Not frozen, not waiting. Present. Because the new cycle does not open when you chase it. It opens when you stop orbiting what already closed. And when that opening comes into view, it will not feel dramatic. It will feel appropriate. Like something that could only meet you now. And as everything begins to settle into this quieter alignment, I want to leave you with something simple. Not instructions, not advice, just a shared understanding between two people who know what it means to keep going. If you're feeling that subtle sense of change in the air, you're not imagining it. But it doesn't need your urgency. It doesn't need your effort. It doesn't need you to prove that you're ready. It only needs your honesty. There is a moment in every Aries journey when speed stops being the answer. Not because you've lost momentum, but because you've gained perspective. You've lived enough life to know that not every open door is meant to be rushed through. Some doors respond better when you arrive steady, grounded, fully yourself. What you've been doing lately may not look dramatic from the outside. You haven't been making bold announcements. You haven't been chasing validation. You've been doing something far more meaningful. You've been staying true to the quiet version of yourself that doesn't need noise to feel real. That takes courage. A deeper kind of courage than action. Because it's easy to move fast. It's harder to trust stillness. And here's something I want you to hear clearly, as a friend. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the direction your life is taking. Not anymore. You've already paid the cost of staying too long in places that asked you to abandon your instincts. You've already learned what happens when you override your inner knowing just to keep peace. This time, you're doing it differently. Not by fighting, not by proving, but by choosing not to return to what required you to be smaller than you are now. That choice may feel quiet, but it's powerful in ways that last. If doubt shows up, let it pass without engaging it. Doubt often visits when old versions of us realize they no longer have authority. If impatience shows up, notice it gently. Impatience is the part of you that hasn't yet learned how to rest in alignment, and if you feel a strange mix of calm and uncertainty, that's okay too. That's what growth feels like when it's honest. You are not standing still because you're stuck. You're standing still because you're listening. Listening to what no longer pulls you. Listening to what no longer drains you. Listening to the version of yourself that doesn't need to be loud to be sure. Let me ask you one last question, not to answer out loud, just to sit with. What if this phase of your life isn't asking you to become someone new, but simply to stop abandoning who you already are? That question alone carries enough wisdom to guide you forward. So as you move through the coming days, don't look for signs in the noise. Pay attention to what feels steady, to what doesn't require you to rush, to what feels quietly respectful of your energy. That's where your next chapter is already taking shape. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to force it. Just keep doing what you've been doing, standing where you are, trusting what you feel, and most importantly, not turning back. This journey isn't finished. It's simply finding its rhythm. And you're exactly where you need to be to hear it. Before we close this space, let me ask you something gently. Not to answer right now, just to notice. What if the shift you've been sensing isn't asking you to do anything at all, but asking you to notice what no longer pulls you? That's the small observation most people miss, the moment when effort disappears, when urgency softens, when silence stops feeling empty and starts feeling accurate. Here's the quiet reminder I want to leave with you. You don't have to fill this space with decisions. You don't have to name the next chapter yet. Some truths only stay true when they're allowed to remain unspoken for a while. So tonight, or sometime soon, try this simple inner practice. No rituals, no rules, just this. Sit somewhere quiet. Close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself one honest question. Where have I already stopped forcing things? And why does that feel calmer than I expected? You don't need an answer right away. Just let your body respond. That response is enough. I'll share something personal before we part. Every time my life truly changed, it didn't announce itself. It whispered, and the only reason I heard it was because I finally stopped running. If this message met you at the right moment, let me know in the comments. One word is enough, or simply type, "I trust myself." And if you're walking this path with us, consider subscribing. Not for predictions, but for companionship. For these quiet conversations that remind us we're not alone in becoming who we already are. Aries, trust your pace, trust what no longer needs noise, and trust that this journey is still unfolding. The next message is already forming, and we'll meet it together when the moment is ready.